Listen up, trusted friends. Start up, trust smarter, execute your plan, take action. If you are ready to listen up, here is today's story. Dennis Shields, LawCash, Esquire Bank, YieldStreet, founder. I am Mitchell Chadrow, your host, and this is the Listen Up Show. Today's entrepreneur, our guest, he is a litigation funding expert, banker, author, and philanthropist. Sold a company back in 1999 called Health Shield, a Broadway producer. Appeared in a major motion picture. You may have also seen him on the hit TV show Housewives of New York. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Certainly. I am super excited to have you on the show. We are ready to listen up. So are you ready to tell your story?
Sure.
Great. That's what I love to hear, Dennis. YieldStreet, what is it?
YieldStreet is a crowdfunding platform where it fills a need which for a long time was not filled. So when the Jobs Act came about, the idea was really to democratize investing. So we had a team with a lot of expertise in investing in alternative assets. And traditionally, those alternative assets were financed by big family offices and institutions. And that the product itself that we designed was really to meet the needs of the regular person where they could have the same opportunities that these other companies had for a long time. So what we did was we set up a platform. We brought in one of the founders was a guy named Milind Maher, who was a founder of Yodel, which they exited for a few $100 million. And he was probably the most effective person I've ever been in business with. So what we did was the idea was we would offer assets relatively short in duration, less than 36 months, non-correlated to any industry, not correlated to the economy, and with good cash flow. And we were looking for low teens, unlevered yields. And
so we're talking about alternative assets. We're talking about changing the whole approach to investing for retail and institutional investors. Can you provide a few examples on how you're actually unlocking this wealth potential?
Yeah, sure. First of all, it's much more for retail. And how we're unlocking it is we're taking asset classes which we've traditionally invested in or co-invested with large institutions and offering it on the platform, as well as finding very good originators in the alternative asset set. So the litigation funding, we're the largest litigation funders in the United States, and that traditionally the average person does not have access to that type of product, yet it's a very high yielding, low risk product. We've done hard money deals, shipping deals. The main thing is these are assets where there's a huge difference between perceived risk and actual risk, and the reality is the fortresses of the world have made millions, if not billions of dollars on these asset classes because they had access to it. And our idea was to bring the originator utilizing the platform with the individual investor. To date, we've funded over $400 million with no principal loss, and our yields have been north of 12%. So it's been a huge, huge success. We continue to grow our origination platform, and it really is unique, especially, right now we're starting to see a raise in interest rates, but still, the 10-year treasury, there's very little places where you could put money out and get money safely at 12%, 11%, 13%. And the reality is institutions have done it for years, and it's funded a lot of things. Our idea is we're going to finance the asset class, put them right in touch with the individual, and give the individual the same opportunities that they've never had before.
Let me unpack this for the audience, people that are interested, obviously, in alternative investments. What's really setting YieldStreet apart is that you're this pioneer in the alternative asset space, and it looks as if you're a market leader in 5 or 6 different asset classes. I mean, I see here marine finance investing, where you're actually connecting the shipping industry to retail investors, which is really fascinating. And I also see another example here about vessel acquisitions for the raw materials, for example, steel. Can you tell us how you actually got into the niche?
You know, all these things, because we've been doing specialty finance for so long, and we've been in so many asset classes, and our team, Michael Weiss was at a fund that just did alternative assets. Pat Priest is another gentleman who works with us. And Pat ran the group at DZ, which was, I think, $5+ billion in assets, and he was in over like 60 different asset classes. So the trick, there's an expression, there's riches and niches. So the trick is really to identify the asset class, get comfortable with the actual asset, and then find the leaders. And we started in the shipping business, where we looked at a bunch of deals, and we were able to bring on the gentleman who ran the Greece office for Deloitte and Touche, and he was in charge of shipping. So we brought in a guy who has 30 years of experience on the accounting side, making sure there wasn't fraud, and was the accountant for a lot of the good operators. So we saw the opportunity. We also, on the first couple of deals we did, we have good relations with the insurance community. We were able to insure 100% of the principal as we educated our customers. And now we have a huge pipeline. And the reality is that one great thing about YieldStreet is the originators, because we have flexibility in setting up structure, originators really like working with us. And, you know, we're not as myopic as some of the other people in this business. And we've earned a reputation of trust and integrity over the years. So if you take the lending for buildings, there's lots of really, really good originators in that business, and the ability for them to draw on cash and have access to cash on good deals that they didn't traditionally have is exactly what the Jobs Act intended.
Now I see that the company actually won for Best Alternative Investment Platform, so I wanted to talk to you about the actual platform itself. This would have been the Benzinga Global FinTech Award, which is a very prominent award that's given. And so I wanted to find out, so what are the number of your users on the platform and the equity investors that are on the platform itself? And maybe you can delve a little bit deeper into...
The equity investors is one very large family office, which I think has become a trust. It's $25 billion in more than that in assets, and then Graycroft and the Malones, and then ourselves. So that's the. Oh, I forgot one other.
And is that a Delaware trust? I mean, are you allowed to disclose who that is?
No, we're not. I mean,
okay, that's fair enough.
Investors, but the equity piece, you know, I'm going to go back to Malind for a second, because when Malind, and go back to the award, the website and his design and his engineering and his ability to access the community is truly remarkable. I don't know if I'm legally allowed to disclose how many users we have, but I can.
I mean, is it more than 10,000? Is it more than 20,000?
Significantly more than those numbers.
Yeah, okay.
But what I would say the most interesting thing is these deals, the access for us in terms of capital on good deals, and we only put deals that we put our own money in on the site, is we don't even know what the capacity. You know, we may be able to do $500 million a month that we have a very loyal investor base. The average investor, more than 50% comes back, and they come back numerous times, and the investor base is growing each month. Each month we set a new record for investors, and the reality is we have a superior product. So when we brought the Malin, so Michael and I came with a very strong asset-based lending background. Michael's background was more the venture type deal, and my background was much closer to regular banking type deals. And then we have a very, very good credit committee, and then we have a team of people. Tony Quello, a former congressman, who was him and Bob Dole were the sponsors of the American Disability Act of '87. But we have an unbelievable team on the credit side. We're only doing a small percentage, a handful of percentages of deals that come in, even though we've passed up deals that other people have done. That's fine. But the reality is that the platform itself is very, very easy to use. There's a university where you can really educate yourselves on products. It's totally transparent, and it's however you want to. If you look at the money that you have, there's some percentage of your net wealth that should be an alternate, and we look at things that aren't considered alternates, and you take mortgages or leases or leasing, and we look at asset classes where we outperform them, and we just get a more appropriate return. So I tell everybody, I don't know if the number you should have is 30% of your net worth or whatever it is, but there are space. The litigation space has now become super competitive you see that Fortress, and they were acquired by SoftBank, but you see Manny Friedman with his I don't even know how much he raised, the guys, Gertchen Keller in Chicago. People are realizing that there's a real need. This is an asset which is almost always David going up against Goliath, and it does a real social good. On the other hand, all these institutional money that's coming in, we have much more of an operating track record of operating these types of companies successfully. And it's not, in terms of fees and the percentage that's going to the investor, it's much higher on our platform in most cases.
Now, you mentioned team, and when I hear that word, I think of Ron Suber. And, of course, our audience here on the Listen Up show knows Ron because we've had him on the show, and we've had other companies that he's involved with here on the show. I know he's an advisor as a board member to YieldStreet. Can you tell the audience, because they are familiar with Ron, how you actually came into contact with him, and it sort of helps explain who you just have on this YieldStreet team?
Well, Ron Suber is an example, and we have other businesses, but Ron Suber is a perfect example of when we create a business, and we've had some success in the past, that when we're looking for an advisory board or board member, we start off and we say, okay, there's no limitations on who we can get. Who's the smartest guy, best person that we would want to either sit on an advisory board or a board, and that would help the company most, help the company grow, have insight, been through these types of things before. And Ron, obviously, other than being a terrific success and a great guy, his insight, his relationships it's unbelievable having people like Ron. And, you look at the other people also who are on the advisory board, and the advisory board for us in this business as well as other businesses has been an unbelievable tool. people sometimes put an advisory board together to put a bunch of good names. That's not what we're past the point of worrying about credibility. We've been investing in these assets for a very, very long time with high yields, but the advisory board and, especially Ron, he's a pioneer. He's insightful. He's brilliant. I mean, there's no characteristic that he doesn't have that you would want involved with a company like YieldStreet.
So you had mentioned litigation finance as an alternative asset class. So let's just switch it up just a little bit if we could. Esquire Bank, ticker symbol ESQ. I love that. Esquire Financial Holdings, of course, is a full-service, federally chartered FDIC bank. And, of course, I'm familiar with them as providing cutting-edge banking services to trial attorneys because I do complex litigation. And also it includes case cost finance, structured settlement loans, case cost lines of credit. And you're actually one of the founding organizers, and, of course, you're the executive chairman of the board of Esquire Bank. So how did you actually start up a de novo bank when the field is highly regulated and can sometimes be crowded?
Well, it's a great question. One of the funniest things is, I was younger, and when you're younger, you don't know that you shouldn't be able to get things done. So it's a good thing to hire young. So what happened was we had started LawCash, and I'll give you a quick 2-minute background on LawCash. Was I was appointed by the chief judge in the Court of Appeals to be on the grievance committee. I'm not an attorney, but as a layperson for the 2nd and 11th Judicial Departments. And that's the committee responsible for disciplining lawyers. And when there's a bar association complaint that's serious, it ends up at the grievance committee, and that's the committee for suspending lawyers or regulating what their activities were. And a case came before our committee where a lawyer had lent a client money. The case had gone south. They ended up threatening each other, and this is in the 90s. And the case came before me, and we had a fairly substantial healthcare business, and I didn't know lawyers in most states couldn't lend clients money, but I learned it on this case, and in this case, it was an example of no good deed goes unpunished because the lawyer lent money to the client who did not get evicted from his home, and then the client was in a day in the light video where he was complaining of real serious injuries, and the defense there was a video where he was clearly impaired, but the case just really went badly. But I spoke to Harry Hirschfeld, who was running the healthcare business at the time, and we spent a lot of time sort of brainstorming about the asset class, and we said, is this an asset class? We had no idea how big it was to find out that including SSDI, it's a $500 billion annual asset class. And so we were surprised by that, but we said, it has its challenges. There's an unknown maturity date. There's an uncertain outcome, and there's no ability to service debt. So, but we said, okay, these are our ways to work around it. You may need a little more equity. And make a long story short, that business ended up, we've looked at over 1 million cases, but to get to answering your question, by, the early 2000s, we had 30,000 law firms that we were doing business with in 41 states. And we said, look at this, and there was no secret sauce. There was nothing, how we got the law firms. First of all, the industry didn't exist. So the first calls were explaining, yes, you can do this. Yes, you could help your client. Yeah, if your client needs surgery. So in the beginning, we would make all these speeches and have all these conferences and met lawyers one-on-one, and slowly but surely, the lawyer would have a use for this. He would have a multi-million-dollar case where the client was about to be homeless, or, as I said, a surgery case. So the business became more and more recognized the legislative environment. Legislators recognized this as a good business. There's nobody who would possibly be against it other than somebody who didn't want to pay the money out that they're supposed to, because it doesn't cause anybody to pay more money than they're supposed to. It basically levels the playing field. So we started to do this, and we said, wow, we have all these lawyers who are distributing all this money. What are the other services we could provide? So we started to provide settled case funding for law firms, settled case funding for clients, which really was a courtesy business. We didn't make very much money on it because the duration was so short at that time. Now it's grown. But so what happened was we said, what are the other businesses to go into? So we started to look into banking. There are two things that we found about banking that shocked us. One is that the constant battle for tort reform is the main funder of that is something called the Chamber of Commerce, which is weird that the Chamber of Commerce would be against an industry. But the Chamber of Commerce and the people who funded the Chamber of Commerce were the big money center banks. So number one, we realized, and for the law firms, that they have these huge deposits in these money center banks, and then when there's a fight for lowering malpractice caps, or it turned out that the biggest givers were the people who they were actually supporting. So they were in a business where they were doing business with people who were trying to put them out of business. And then the second thing we realized was they controlled huge deposits. And in banking, no matter what happens, zero interest environment, poor credit, deposits are still incredibly important. And being able to give white glove service. And then the bank really evolved. And we said, well, what are the needs of the trial bar? Well, they have an irregular cash flow, but the value is really good. And when you look at things and compare it to a mortgage or another asset, you would see that they have the asset quality was high. It didn't matter really what was going on in the economy, and that the lawyers were just either misunderstood or here's one of the examples of what happens. If you're a mass tort lawyer and you're building your case inventory and you're not settling a lot of cases, your ability to borrow goes down, yet it's like owning a house. So you buy this house and the house is appreciating and is appreciating and appreciating. So the lawyers then would have less money to run their practice because they were settling fewer cases. And the reality was the value of their cases was getting higher and higher. And we were able to recognize it, demonstrate it, put our toe in the water, show the regulators how it worked. Over a 4 or 5 year period, getting them really, really comfortable with this asset to the point when they realize it's a good asset. So in terms of the bank, then we just listened to, we again talk about an advisory board. We went to the top lawyers in America to say, okay, tell us what you need. Tell us what your bank's not doing. And then we created a myriad of products which meet the law firm's need. And now, I don't want to say we're order takers because we're always speaking, but the function of the products that we have, they're superior products. They're great for the law firm. They're great for the clients. And it's just getting the word out there, because any lawyer doing complex litigation or high volume practice, Esquire Bank enables him to run his practice and run his practice like a business. Because in today's world, a law practice, being a good lawyer is not enough. It's so competitive. The way cases are acquired through the internet, through television, it's very, very different. 30 years ago, you did a good job. You kept your clients forever. So you have to run your law practice like a business. There's all these rules, and they're always changing. And we enable Esquire Bank and even YieldStreet and some of the other products we have. We enable law firms to be able to run like a business and give them access to capital that they would not traditionally have with somebody who didn't understand the asset class.
Listen up, trusted friends, because, you're always wondering, how am I going to come up with these ideas? How am I going to actually execute on those ideas? And here are two awesome businesses, LawCash and Esquire Bank, and this is actually how Dennis was actually able to do it. Our startup round is actually sponsored by TrustSmarter.com. Trusts and estates are not just for the rich and famous. You need help with your estate planning. Trust Smarter focuses on you, the consumer. Get connected with certified financial planners who will help you plan your trusts and estates. They have relationships with corporate trust companies all over the world. That's TrustSmarter.com. TrustSmarter is a virtual cash incorporated company. Okay, now back to the show. So you actually create LawCash then in 2000. This would have been after you sold Health Shield in 1999 as a pre-settlement funding company. And I just love the name LawCash, the idea, the niche. And of course, everybody has to know the awesome number at 1-800-LawCash. And I guess that's how LawCash is tied back into YieldStreet litigation finance, and maybe as to why it's actually an attractive investment right now.
Yeah, LawCash has had significant yields for a 20-year period. We were first financed by a fund, and then became bankable. And we're of the bank of our borrower, we're their longest standing client. So it's sort of how business, I guess, is supposed to work, in the sense of you start with X, we put in our own equity. We started with equity money. We were able to leverage that with a fund, and then became bankable. And each step makes the business more profitable. And really, since inception, Harvey Hirschfeld, so Harvey became the chief operating officer or the president of LawCash, and right away we recognized a need for good governance, and we created a trade organization. And I think the first deal that the trade organization or agreement ever may have been with the New York State Attorney General. But now there's 50 companies in the trade organization. What went from a concept is now a business which is a multi-billion-dollar business with thousands and thousands of companies. And like I said, in the beginning we had no competition, and then it was sort of mom and pops, and today it's Blackstone and Fortress. It's become a huge business. There's a company that went public on the AIM Burford that does much more corporate litigation. There's a new listing, I'm told, that's also coming out. But that too there's been a lot of players. UBS was in that very early. And that's a very, very good business. But it all goes to, you mentioned something all about execution. You could have the best idea in the world. Somebody once told me that the key is to hire good people who hire good people. So when you look at now all the money that goes through the various businesses and all the products that we have, I'd say the thing that we've done best is we have real high quality people. The people that run the bank, the CEO of the bank is a guy named Andrew Sagliaca, and he has the perfect background. He was a corporate controller he's an accountant by trade, but he was a corporate controller at John Candace's bank. I am having a brain at Norfolk, and he came there when they were $1 billion in assets, and he worked there through the sale where they were 60 some odd billion in assets. But it gave him the skill set because they did 14 acquisitions where he was able to really manage these small banks and put them into the Norfolk system. And also he was responsible really for most of the accounting. Dan Healy was a great CFO, but Andrew was a unique individual and a unique talent, and he understands, how the regulators want things done. And we all share the board, management, a great relation, but we were very, very fortunate to get a talent like Andrew at the bank. and it enabled us to create more products that would have been much more challenging. And we also have the guy Rich Powers, who's been on the board and was the first CEO, and he's still on the board. And he's got 40 years, I don't want to insult his age, he's got, I think, 40 years of banking experience. So the bank, not only other than the lawyers, we have a couple of other loan products. We also have a loan product for settled cases at a very, very cheap rate. And we've become a relatively large merchant processing business, a bank for merchant processing, and that business is growing. And one of the nice things about the bank is, although we've done great with basically no branches and we have a lot of deposits, we also are running at about 23% non-interest income, which is it's a very, very high number, and all our ratios are really, really good. And the most amazing thing about Esquire, what we're so excited about, is it's a $500 billion industry. There's 300,000 lawyers who would be our law firms that would be our addressable market, and we're only banking like a few hundred of them. So really, the sky is the limit. The products do get better and better, and we've also entered into a deal with a company called Litify, who is a software company, and they have a really superior product, but the technology is going to enable us to even grow our business quicker because of all the information, and it's a partnership they have with Salesforce, and they've really done a good job, and it will make ease of use for all of our products better. So we're really excited about that on the technology side.
So how do you actually keep your focus? I mean, all of these businesses, of course, your family, your life, you're involved in charity. I mean, I'm just dizzy just kind of reading everything and going through everything, that you're involved with. How do you actually do this?
Well, I'd say one thing is that having good people is key. And, I probably have a team of 10 people in 6 different businesses that I speak to every day. I think I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing. And then, I think we've done a good job, and it will continue to get better and better at keeping everybody's interest aligned. And so we're doing a couple of things which really should step that up, but the businesses are really synergistic, and we're in a very good position probably to take better advantage of, and that's one of the main goals for 2019. But in our core business, really, it seems like we do a lot, and I always remember the Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial. We do one thing, chicken, and
I love commercials, so yeah.
But in general, what we really do is understand an asset class, understand who's providing that asset class, and if we can get our arms around that, then it's just a question, what box does it go into? So some will fit in a couple of boxes, and some are perfect for you take a New York building, which YieldStreet does a hard money loan, and Esquire just takes the senior piece, and it's great for both parties. So same is true of if you have a law firm that's growing, well, they'll warrant X amount for the bank, and then in terms of growing through advertising, there's an opportunity for YieldStreet. So, and also when we look at the numbers, the bank clients are settling billions and billions and billions of dollars of cases each year, and introducing them to what we're doing over at YieldStreet. And we're also in the payment processing business. So for the last, forever, lawyers used to pay clients by check, and it was like an event, and they'd shake their hand, and it was a good way. And what we feel this year, we're really going to take that into the 21st century with either a debit card with Esquire Bank or a prepaid card. and it's a much better product. It gives the clients, the law firms, access to their clients. So it'll be a very good tool for keeping clients. If the people are getting more than one or two checks, it's super
like an affinity. It would be like an affinity product, but with Esquire Bank and the actual law firm itself in use with their clients.
Right, and it saves the law firm money, and it also enables us to lend the money really efficiently. The more efficient we can lend the money, the cheaper our pricing is. And we've always done that. So when we got a cheaper line, we brought our pricing down. And so the consumer is better off. But if you look at industries, and you look at all these industries now that pay, very few people pay people by checks, and you look at this litigation industry, including disability, is $700 billion a year, and it's like one of the last bastions where they're still using this antiquated checking system, and it's expensive. It's more likely 50 times to be defrauded, more likely to be defrauded by utilizing checking. But get back to the answer is, so you'd say, okay, payment processing and Green Dot worth $4 billion. They do that really, really well. There's a couple of really good companies, and it's the future. But if you look and we say, okay, now we take our distribution network that we've already established one lawyer at a time, and it continues to get better and better, and we have two strategic acquisitions, which actually are going to close in August, which will expand our 42,000 lawyers to over 50,000. But then you say, okay, now we've got 50,000 people to provide payment processing for, and the payment processing, especially in fields like comp or disability, enables the law firms to make so much more revenue. So, and it also keeps them in touch with the client, and so we're really, really excited about that. But
I'll tell you what, I'm really excited for you in 2019 because that is an awesome niche, and there's a lot of opportunity. So I know that I'm pumped up for you because I'm certainly interested as well. I love books, and I actually have a book club back at mitchellchadro.com/books. And I know, Dennis, that you've actually written two. I see here one called The Urgency of Now and God Went Fishing. Can you give us a quick, 1 minute overview of these books so that I can have a link so people?
I'll give you the fourth thing. I'm going to add two, but I'll do each one in 45 seconds. So
awesome. Love it.
So I wrote a short story when I was, I don't want to spoil the ending. When I was a senior in college, my closest friend who was a senior at Cornell got sick. The short story was published in Social Life magazine, and it's actually running. The website is always running, but it was last month. But it's a 10-minute read, and it definitely. I think I capture the essence of the characters, and it's also nominated for a bunch of awards, including what really is the best short story. So I'm sure it'll be in an anthology as well. So that's the time to plant here. I'm in the process of finishing a play called Me Too, which I actually wrote before this whole Harvey Weinstein and this thing, but it addresses.
Okay. Ironically enough, sure.
But it addresses the same issues, and we're in the late stage of production, and it's going well. I mean, it's either going to end up on Broadway or off Broadway, but it's definitely going to end up in a theater in the next 6 to 12 months. The two books, The Urgency of Now and God Went Fishing. God Went Fishing was my first book. It was very well critically received. It's a satire, and sold a good deal of copies. My second book, I tried a different genre. The Urgency of Now, it was really homage to Hemingway, a couple of his books, and it was a love story, and it was a story about people drinking, and I tried to capture that, and I realized those were two things I knew nothing about: love and drinking. And my book sales showed that it was right. I didn't really know anything about that.
That's great.
But you know what? It's a good read if you're sitting on a beach or going on an airplane. I don't know. I read it now, and I don't want to say I'm not embarrassed by it, but it could have been better.
Okay, I hear you. We talked quickly about our mutual friend Ron Suber, and he also wrote this awesome article that he just most recently posted here on LinkedIn, and he asked this great question: what are you willing to struggle for? Can you give us a pithy answer on that?
It is a great question. I think in terms of struggling, it sounds like sort of a flippant answer, but to do good. And I think that I'm fortunate that I'm in a position where I'm sometimes able to help people, and I'm comfortable where I am in business, but I think that I get the most satisfaction and would do the most really helping others. I try to instill that in my children, and whether, there's unbelievable strides being made in medicine right now and all these different areas. There's huge discovery this week at the Human Genome Project on treating late-stage Alzheimer's. So you want to be able to take a certain amount of your time, and you want to be able to devote a certain amount of time to your family and friends, and you want to devote a certain amount of time to business, and also you want to devote a certain amount of your time to really giving back. And it's not just writing a check. It's getting other people involved and doing the proper diligence and things like that. And, this year we're really going to try and raise a lot of money and really be active with epilepsy. We've given money to a bunch of the relief efforts. But I'd say really the struggle is a combination of really, it's so easy to get sidetracked. And so the struggle is with time and with, making sure that you're doing right as a person.
Well, what's the best business advice you've ever received?
Bad people make for bad business.
Okay, I like it.
And I don't want to curse, but Bob Mitzman, who's a board member and a very close friend of mine, started out as a cab driver, working his way through college, and he founded a company called Quick International Couriers, which was one of the largest time-critical, 24 hours, 7 days a week logistic companies. He just sold it for a good deal of money. A lot of money. And he has, it's sort of like bad people make for bad business. He calls it his no A rule. And it doesn't matter in terms of doing business or hiring. If you think somebody's a bad guy, you stay away from them. You look at like the Patriots locker room, and you just don't want cancers. And one person could take a good company and really be destructive. Yeah. I had a CEO in a card processing business where I don't want to say anything bad. So
I hear you.
That's good business. But then again, it seems like I'm really focused on this, and I've been lucky because most of the people I've done business with are good people and are honest and hardworking and diligent. But James, I'm never sure how to pronounce his name, the cryptocurrency guy, James anyway, he always is putting quotes on LinkedIn, and he put a quote that never do business with pigs. You get sloppy and they get happy.
Our fast pitch round is sponsored by Chadrow.net, CHADROW.net. Startups, bootstrappers are price smarter. When hiring an attorney, one of our business's greatest costs can be paying your lawyer high hourly rate. Your day-to-day main focus is growing your business, so Chadrow.net created a business legal service plan. All lawyers and CPA professionals in the directory are verified as in good standing with their respective state bar and state board of accountancy admitted. These lawyers and CPA professionals provide you and your business with legal and or tax advice. The best part, no more being nickel and dime for a 6-minute telephone call. No more dealing with billable hours because Chadrow.net is not a law firm. Instead, just pay one upfront, fully disclosed low fee. See for yourself now the business legal service plan. Chadrow.net. Get legal solutions for life. Now let's get back to it. I can't leave the interview without asking you because everybody wants to know, because everybody watches, of course, the New York Housewives. How did you actually get involved with Bethenny Frankel?
I've known Bethenny a very, very long time. I met her when we were both still in college, and my ex-wife and her were friends in high school, and we remained friends the whole time that I was married. I mean, we were just nothing but friends. And then right after Jill and I got separated, Bethenny and I started dating, and we've been together on and off now for I think it was almost 4 years. That's what she told me. That's what she told me. And again, and she's great. She's a great mother. She's a great person. She's really, really smart. She's terrific in every way. But we do break up a lot.
That's great. Well, I was, of course, most people were, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. I certainly was impressed, not only of her coming up with the idea, executing on the idea of Skinny Girl, and then basically turning it around and exiting the business, earning approximately, as it's reported, $100 million. And, I also interviewed other spirits and wine entrepreneurs, a couple, Bonnie Harvey and Michael Houlihan, who actually came up with the iconic wine brand that you're probably familiar with, Barefoot Wine, and then they actually turned around and they sold it to E.J. Gallo Winery. So in knowing that I was going to have you on, I was going to ask you, so do you think Bethenny would be open to coming on a Listen Up Show podcast? I mean, I've spoken to other people in that niche.
I think we're speaking, so I can ask her. I'll ask her. She's very generous with her time. I don't know if you know this about her, but she did, and then I'll tell you one other quick funny story about her, but she did the largest single relief effort ever for an individual. She raised over $60 million for Puerto Rico on her own, and it started with her just watching and, she heard some other celebrity, sort of talking about money, and she said, I'm going to really do something. And she had been involved with Houston and other relief efforts, but she went to Puerto Rico really early on, long before, I mean, maybe it was 7 days after, and it touched her heart, and I think she's been back 8 or 9 times. She is still, supporting it, but she's very clever. So when she was doing that, she really put together a network of people in the medical supply business, of people in the airline business, of friends of hers with planes. And so when the next relief effort happens, it will be easier and easier. And she's really interested. She's on Shark Tank, and she's interested in doing, more humanitarian type thing. But the thing you said with breaking up is, I don't know, about 4 weeks ago, we were still together, and I was looking at something on the internet, and then all of a sudden I Googled her or me, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just checking to see how our relationship is doing."
I love that. In order to check in with Google to see how everything is.
She gets a lot of press. I mean, she.
Sure, no, but it's nice to hear other aspects of people, because that's what the show is all about, as you know. Everybody also wants to know. So what's it like living in Trump Tower? This is what they want to know. Can you imagine? I mean, besides business, this is what's on people's minds.
All right. So first of all, it's an experience. You have, we've had, the last thing didn't get a lot of publicity. Like last Friday night, they found 6 devices attached with cell phones on the commercial side, and they had everybody leave the commercial side, but the residential side they did not evacuate. But when you get to see the same Secret Service and special police people around, and the people are nice. The people are very, very nice, and it used to be in the beginning when everybody was getting used to getting in and out of the building, getting things delivered, but now they have it down to a science. The police force really it's great. They're friendly. They're really on top of things, and they do as much as they can to be unobtrusive. And so it's never dull. We've had now a fire, which unfortunately.
Yeah, well, tell us about that, because I was reading not too long ago about that. I mean, obviously it goes without saying, a very scary incident. Can you just briefly tell us about that?
It was crazy. It was that you could hear funny noises, but nobody really knew what was going on. And then they turned the elevators off, and I had to walk down, 50 flights or something, and there was much more smoke, and there was a lot of water even on the stairways. So, and then when you got outside and you saw the fire on the floor that it was on, I think it was on 52 or 51, and you saw that, it was a raging fire, and a bunch of firefighters, they did an amazing job, that only one person getting hurt, but a couple of firefighters were injured. But we had a fire. There was the guy who climbed up the building, and that was right on one of my bedrooms, where you could look down, you saw this guy climbing up the window. So that was an interesting, and then there's been 2 bomb scares. There was one where somebody left something in Nike, and a lot of people say, how do you deal with it? And in general, I find it sort of interesting, and I like watching how, Secret Service and how professional they are. And then of course, when he comes to town or Melania is here, then there's somebody protesting. So it definitely has its challenges, but he does a great job with building buildings, and God bless him.
Well, one of the most interesting things when I was reading that article, it actually says that the person that had called you to tell you was one of your high school friends, Michael Cohen, of course, who was Trump's former personal attorney. And I thought to myself, gee, I didn't have any cool friends like that when I was in high school. I mean, I remember meeting the president twice. Once was after a Jackie Mason performance at the Trump Castle, and again I met the president when he was just walking in Trump Taj Mahal. He was just like walking down. There was no one really with him. Of course, this was way before he was president. And I'm sure your connections are a little bit closer living in the building. I mean, have you ever bumped into the president and, said, hi, how you doing? And, I don't know if he's your personal friend as well, but.
What I would say, and again, I don't want to say anything controversial one way or the other.
That's fair enough.
In a personal way, if you meet him, you can't help but like him. You know,
Correct.
you disagree with his politics or whatever.
Sure.
I have no feeling. I certainly don't know enough to comment about something like that. But as you know, on a personal level, you know, he's friendly. The people who work here, and that's sometimes a real good sign. The doorman, the elevator guys, they all really, really like him and respect him, and they have a bunch of stories of how he's helped them when he hasn't had to, and he definitely cares and takes tremendous pride in the building. And like I said, on a personal level, he's a great neighbor or owner of the building or whatever. And Michael Cohen, the Bethenny yelled at me for commenting at all. But what actually happened was I walked out of the building, and because I don't know why they didn't notify a lot of people. So Michael Cohen had sent me a text when I was going to the shower, and I had just come back from LA. And he sent me a text, and he said, "Are you at Trump?" And I wrote, "Yes." And then I took a shower, and I really didn't look at my phone for another 20 minutes. And he had written, "Get out."
Oh, geez.
And then, so I walked down, as I said, there was smoke and there was water and all these reporters, but there were very few people coming out. So one reporter said, "How'd you know to come out?" I said, "Oh,
yeah,
I went to grade school with Michael, and I like Michael. He's a terrific guy." But, you know, Michael was very, very well known and respected in political circles at that point, and he had been the president's lawyer for a long period of time. But it was that week when all the stuff broke. It was like Thursday, and, you know, when everything broke with they wanted Mueller and they want to question him, and, you know, and now I don't know what's going on. I hope, you know, Michael's got a family that he loves, and I hope nothing but the best for him and for the president.
Our wrap-up round, sponsored by BankSmarter.com. BankSmarter.com. More and more consumers are banking smarter. Open a bank account now with your smartphone. Mobile banking, alternative lenders, peer-to-peer lending. Bank Smarter. That's BankSmarter.com. You know, to get the show notes, I want everybody to head back to MitchellChadro.com/show075. Just real quick here in closing, Dennis, three main takeaways for the audience to sort of, you know, take away from that you want them to take away from the interview.
Number one, go on YieldStreet, look at the products, follow them, you know, put your toe in the water. It's in some ways business that I'm most proud of. I really think that it's business that changes lives and really can help people, and so that's number one. Number two, thank you. I appreciate your giving me all the time. And so number two is everybody should listen and follow you, and go to your website, listen to your podcast. Come on.
No, I really appreciate it, Dennis. That's very, very gracious of you.
That's number two. And the third thing is, you know, what's the third thing? Try and do a nice thing every day.
Perfect. And how are people going to stay in contact with you, Dennis?
Well, I was never, the YieldStreet folks made me get on, I was never on social media at all. The Yield folks made me join LinkedIn, and I actually like LinkedIn, which I'm not on Facebook.
It really is a terrific platform for those who actually go in there and actually discover all the various tools that are available to them and leverage those resources, some of which are for free.
And then the last thing is, it's another sort of funny, or I think sort of funny Bethenny story, is like Bethenny had said something, and Bethenny really does read a lot of the tweets that she gets back. So I'm not on Twitter, and she had said something which I didn't exactly agree with. So I decided to test the tweets, and I'm trying just to tweet back, but I wasn't on Twitter. So then I'm trying, and I'm terrible at all these things, but I'm trying to set up a Twitter account to tweet her back, and it's not working, and I keep trying, and I'm getting numbers and passwords, and I don't know what the password is.
That's great.
And then, like, 4 days later, a very close friend of mine is a guy, Brian Koppelman, and Koppelman he's another guy. He's a terrific talent. He wrote the movie Rounders. He discovered Tracy Chapman. He's a brilliant guy. And he created and writes the show Billions. And I think directs it sometimes. So everybody should watch Billions.
Terrific show. Yeah, great.
But Koppelman, all of a sudden I get a thing on my iPad that you have a follower. So I don't know how or why, but somehow he noticed that I signed or something with Twitter. I don't know how it works. So he's my one follower on Twitter.
He's your one follower.
I mean, maybe I have 3 now. But
that's great. Well, I think you're going to have a lot more after this interview.
No, I don't think I'm on to it. I don't.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
I literally.
But here's the thing. YieldStreet is.
Yeah, YieldStreet is. No, on Twitter.
They'll let you know. They'll let you know when they get the tweets.
On Twitter, I wrote a message to Bethenny, which I just assumed she would see, and then.
And no one else.
So the compliment to her. And, he gave me sort of a sarcastic response, but it was funny.
Dennis, I'm really super excited to see what's next for you.
Well, thank you.
Great. Until next time, my trusted friends. Send me your questions after you sign up at the website at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. We're also on Spotify and iHeartRadio. And you can, of course, find us in the iTunes store. And the best podcast player that I'm aware of is Overcast.fm. You could actually go over there and subscribe at mitchellchadro.com/overcast. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list and providing a written review on iTunes. mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It helps other people find the show. Be good now. Until next time, my trusted friends.